Find out what's going on. Get involved. Change things from the inside. Make a difference. Take pride. Multicultural at its best. The Louisa Marshall Show. Coming up.
All new Simply the Best. Get inspired. Their coaches, mentors, speakers, and humanitarians. Mark and Melody are presidents of Global Innovations with Global Peace Let's Talk.
So right now we're presidents over 40 countries in building policy infrastructure, you name it, for deep humanitarian impact in support of the 17 Sustainable Goals of the United Nations.
Mark Anthony King is an entrepreneur, a storyteller, and a global leader on Kingdom humanitarian impact.
It's not about your influence, it's about your impact. And this is one of the things I love the most. She says, the order of life, right? To lead a good life, it's God first and service to humanity second. Social media does one thing that is so dangerous, Louisa, and that is what becomes a priority in your life, what becomes critically important is perpetuating lies.
Melody Garcia is a multi-award-winning keynote speaker, international best-selling author, CEO of Luminary Coaching and Life Unscripted.
Social media had become, in one platform, it's good if you weaponize it for the right tools. But you talked about teenagers, teen pressures in the quest of looking perfect, right? The Instagram life, the perfect poses, the perfect lighting, the 10 million apps to make you look something remotely closer to what you don't really look like every day.
As soulmates, they tackle some of the most difficult challenges in the field of coaching. With a world full of influencers, it appears that
it seems like today everybody who has access to an iPhone is an influencer.
Making a difference to others and sharing their life stories, defying fake influencers, social media frenzies, misinformation, and lies.
But you know what I found out, Louisa? It's the authenticity of who you are and the message you deliver that people will stay for.
If being an influencer, it's about your livelihood, then you're not an influencer. You're influencing your own life.
We live in a world where you can purchase a blue check mark and all of a sudden you're an influencer.
$10,000.
Right? You can buy followers.
Do you think that having faith is enough?
Having faith is critical. Even if I was to take it out of a God context, so you talk about the Wright brothers, you talk about Albert Einstein, they had faith enough that something was going to work. They were going to defy every single reasoning or logic because they believed that they had the capacity to make it happen. Outside from faith, courage to defy everything, the naysayers, courage to defy the odds, the tenacity of having that passion burning regardless of what is in front of you is also another critical component.
We are back with Mark Anthony King and Melody Garcia on Finding Inspirations, Faith, and Purpose series.
For those of you who didn't know, Louisa spoke from the heart of what she did for USO, being in the front lines, seeing that suffering, seeing that war zone that literally changed her perspective, that made her pour her heart out more.
Bringing joy and laughter and disconnect in a joyless place.
You have the elements of what a true social conscious leader is, Louisa, not only in your show, but in music. So absolutely be audaciously bold in all your handlings. You have me as a friend, you have me as a fan, when she would tell me about her frustrations.
But you have the ability to turn your frustration into somebody else's education.
One topic that I really want to talk to you guys about, cancel culture. Cancel culture. So it's a very popular phenomenon nowadays. You know, at first it started out as justice, which was good. It started out as justice, making leaders, celebrities, and like yourselves, accountable for your actions and their bad behaviors and what they have said that was really not cool. So what about expressing your own opinion? Is canceling somebody who expressed their honest opinion on social media getting out of hand nowadays?
I have a particularly strong opinion about cancel culture. I come from a family of immigrants who fled their native country because a man named Fidel Castro decided to become a horrible tyrant and decided to turn Cuba, who was at that point a relatively free country, right, into a communist country. And one of the first things that he did, one of the first things that he stripped the people of was their autonomy and their voice. So Fidel Castro created an agenda, the agenda of the Communist Party. So my mother, shout out, I love you, Mom. My mother, who was a young girl at the time growing up in Cuba, she was probably in between first and second grade. She told me that her teachers used to tell her that Fidel Castro was God and communism was the only religion she was allowed to practice. So unfortunately, whenever you speak out against it, they would cancel you. Now, replace the word cancel with imprison or kill. That's basically what they would do when you would speak out against the agenda of the governing body at the time. So my grandmother and my grandfather's voices were silenced because they couldn't speak out about the injustices that they were experiencing. They couldn't speak out about the fact that there was not just extreme poverty, but famine, that there literally wasn't any food to buy. And even if there was food to buy, you weren't allowed to buy it because they would restrict you to what you could buy. My grandmother was only allowed to buy a sack of rice per month to feed herself, her husband, and her 3 daughters. So this is what you're allowed to buy. And if you run out, I'll see you in a month. Hopefully we have enough to accommodate you in a month, right? So when it comes to cancel culture, your opinion, at the end of the day, all you have is your voice. All you have is your perspective. All you have is your choices, your autonomy, right? That is what God gave you. God gave humanity 2 things: dominion, which means our ability to exact our will onto the world and onto our lives, and free will, which is your ability to choose what to do, how to do it, when to do it, where to do it, and with who to do it with, right? So cancel culture, I believe that if you're a public figure, if you're a leader, you have a moral obligation to do the right thing and to be righteous. We have a friend of ours who is a prince, a real life prince.
Titled prince.
Who we were talking to him last week, and at the end of the day, he said, being a prince, being royalty isn't all that it's cracked up to be, right? Because we think being a prince, I'm just going to be sitting on my throne like this, waiting for people to refill, and I have, women feeding me grapes and all that. But he said that being royalty, it's not that. Being royalty is you are a slave. You are a slave to the people. You are an indentured public servant for the totality of your life. That is what that is. So as a leader, absolutely, you need accountability. And if you are behaving in a manner that violates the very nature of the vow that you took, you should be canceled. But if you're, just a regular human being that does not have that your opinion cannot cause countries to go to war with each other, then why would you silence somebody? And you have, as a human being, you have the right to be intelligent, you have the right to be ignorant, and nobody can tell you what or how to do it in that regard.
We've gotten so politically correct to the very extreme field, Louisa, that the cancel culture, if you look at it earlier this year, even last year, right? Sometime this year, they started canceling what Mr. Potato Head, and then Mr. Potato Head was brought back.
Dr. Seuss.
I mean, just
oh my dear.
And you talk about cancel culture to the extreme.
Meanwhile, Cardi B is singing about her WAP, and that's being glorified.
Right. So cancel culture, is it detrimental? Yeah, it seems that people have lost their common sense of what is really valued. Who has the right to cancel you? Unless your message was going to directly harm somebody. But we've gotten so sensitive to the wrong things, that everything's being canceled, that Louisa and Mark, it never impacted us in that degree when we were growing up. Mr. Potato Head was a Mr. Potato Head. Right?
And Mrs. Potato Head was his wife.
Yeah, and that's it.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, this political correctness that has now driven more confusion and insanity, and I'll say this openly, right? That had led to a lot of people just wasting time arguing over the most nonsense things in the world.
There are legitimate influencers right now who are doing good work, but who are too afraid to go against the grain. You never know. This episode might be that catalyst that lights a fire within them, that gives them the courage to reach out. And then you can also have another beautiful conversation. We never know what God has planned. We just know that when we do things from the purity of our heart and for His glory, He opens doors that no man can close.
We'll be back. Don't go away.
There was a young lady who was just praying. Where was she going to get her Thanksgiving meal for her and her papa? And we showed up and we asked her, Stephanie asked, young lady, do you have a Thanksgiving meal prepared? And she said, no, ma'am. And guess what? We said, now you do. And she cried and gave glory to God. Just 5 minutes before that, Les, she was praying, where was the next meal for Thanksgiving going to come from? And we showed up. See, Mark has a point here. By donating your time, you are literally the answer to someone's prayer. Just by showing up.
Just by showing up.
Just by showing up and showing out. And really, if you love God, you love humanity, you want to be a transformational catalyst, you want to be an impactor, you want to be an influencer, all this hashtags that's running around social media, serve at the trenches. Start there.
In the trenches, that's where it is. Listen, Melody, Mark Anthony, thank you for answering the call and allowing God to use you as special instruments to bring hope, love, nourishment, and food, not just for the body, but also for the mind and the spirit.
You know, I can only speak from my personal experience. And just to echo something that you said, at the end of the day, your life, your handlings, and your impact are a testament of your beliefs and of your faith. So while we can't force somebody to believe what we believe or to think the way that we think, leadership, my mentor, my dear friend, my third father, Les Brown, he told me that true leadership is having the ability of showing somebody a view of their life and a view of themselves, right? In a way that completely defies everything they've ever been programmed and everything they've ever been told. You give them a greater concept of themselves than they've ever had before. And in the way that you live your life, in the way that you show up every day, and who you choose to glorify, your life effectively becomes a billboard of what's possible. So I think that in everything we have as public figures, we have a moral obligation to show people what's possible, not what they're being told, not reinforcing their limitations, not reinforcing their traumas, and not perpetuating their confusion, but what's possible when you break free from the toxicity of the culture. And again, my personal experience, what God can do in your life when you submit to Him in every way. You know, everything that I've done, whether people think it's impressive or whether people think that it's inconsequential, has been a product of three things: humbling myself before God, letting Him know that I'm sorry, I did wrong. I had the audacity of believing that I had the ability to navigate my own life and make my own decisions. And then it's surrender. When I tell God, you know, as I look back at every decision that I've ever made and the pain that it's brought, just not just to myself, but the pain that it's caused the people that I love, and just the negative ripple effect that it's had, leading a narcissistic life. Telling God, I don't want to make my own decisions. I surrender to your plan for my life. I give you everything I've ever wanted to be. I give you the titles that I've wanted. I give you the life that I wanted. I give you the ideal partner that I wanted. I give you the destiny and the dreams that I wanted. I give that to you, because I know that what you have in store for me, even if it might not be what I want for myself, is greater than anything I could ever imagine. So I surrender that to you. And then it's obedience. Because at the end of the day, you can humble yourself and you can surrender, and God can show you the way, right? God will not just clear the path, but God will illuminate not just the path, but your steps. And there's a door at the end of that path. God will blow that door off the hinges. The door's wide open. But do you have the faith in him and the love for him to walk through and obey and go where he sets you to go? My life is a testament of two things: resisting doing that, but then loving him enough to put him before my own desires. And, you know, God took somebody who was sexually abused as a kid by men and by women, who was labeled as being ADD, ADHD, dyslexic, agoraphobic, epileptic, a problem child. Somebody who was told every single day when I was in school that I would never amount to anything, that if I was lucky enough to be a janitor, I should consider myself fortunate. Told that I was wrong, being diagnosed as being on the spectrum of autism, becoming a womanizer. I was a dark, toxic person, you know, and I looked at myself and I looked at every area of my life, and I just saw somebody who was worthless. But God is so good. God is so beautiful. God takes somebody who feels worthless in every capacity, and he calls you worthy. And if you have the faith in who he is, because you know who he is, because you have irrefutable proof of what he's done in your life, and you obey, God will take you places that you can't even fathom. God will certify you, qualify you. God will make provisions for you, and God will call you worthy. So I don't care what the world thinks of me. I don't care about followers. I don't answer to mankind. I answer to him, because I know that he can do things that no man can. So my message is, have faith in him and obey him. In all your ways, glorify him. You know, Joshua 1:9 says, especially in this time that we're living in, of uncertainty, God doesn't lie. God is absolute. God says, be strong, be courageous, do not be afraid, do not doubt, because God will be with you wherever you go. Have faith in that. Watch your life change.
You know, Irma Bombeck's quote, which you could pull up while I'm looking it up, it's something that I actually do live by. And I love this quote just because of the fact that, again, it resonates so well in my walk, be it of faith, be it of impact. And it's Irma Bombeck, E-R-M-A. And have you heard of that author? And it just says, when I stand before God at the end of my life, right? It says, and I'm going to read this just so that I don't mess it up, but it says, when I stand before God at the end of my life, I would hope that I would not have a single bit of talent left, and could say, I used everything you gave me. right? I used everything you gave me. Now the ripple effect of that, it's like a flower seed or a seed that you just have to plant it, and he waters every single direction into that. And that has been the true testimony of my life. It stemmed from a prayer I dished out in 2013 where it says, help me help them and activate all the gifts you've given me to help me reach them. It mirrors that quote. And then I leave you with this to your audience, faith. And again, it has nothing to do with religion. It has everything to do with faith, which is believing. And if trust in the Lord with all your heart, do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. That's Proverbs 3:5-6. I chose to believe in the unknown and the unseen, and not see the adversities or the naysayers in front of me, because a greater God I serve. Same God that created everything we see. That's good. Same God that parted the Red Sea. The same God that made David king of nations, right? Same God that has not changed, despite what other people have said he was or is. It's the same God who's been consistent and absolute. So how can I defy and deny my own walk where he led me? So I leave it with that. All it takes, Louisa, is a small faith like a mustard seed. The Bible says he did not require a faith filled like a mountain, right? The size of a mountain. He said, all it takes is a faith as small as a mustard seed. And that little mustard seed of faith is enough for him to come into your life and ignite everything as you go to him. I leave your audience with that. I leave it with a beautiful message that you are born here for a purpose, born here to impact. It doesn't have to be a global scale. It could even just be your existence is enough to break generational curses in your family when you choose the right direction of your life. And it could also be to the stance of being a public figure like Louisa here, who is audacious enough to put Mark and I on a platform that addresses these hard topics that sometimes people don't want to talk about. So for that, we thank you for your gift of time, Louisa. We thank you for the gift of your audience reach and the different channels this is going to be shown, and we will see you soon.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Melody. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you very much.
The life that you live in service of others is limitless. And one of Socrates' most famous quotes, which Dr. Zia shared with us, is, an unexplored life is not worth living.
People are so busy trying to make everyone else happy, forgetting that the number one person that they've got to make happy is themselves. You've got to make yourself happy, because guess what? Because it doesn't matter what good you're doing in the world. It does, don't get me wrong. Whatever good you're doing in the world, whatever impact you're doing is great. Yet if you are not happy, you're only showing up as a smaller version of you.
As a media and public figure, we have the moral responsibility. We have the moral responsibility to tell the truth and to get accurate information about everything, about the vaccine, about the virus, about the protocols, about the COVID guidelines.
I believe that the road to knowledge begins with an embrace and an understanding of our own ignorance. That only when we embrace and understand how much we don't know, do we open our minds to allow new information to come in. Are we willing to unlearn and take old information out? Only when we recognize how little we actually know do we embrace new learning. And so one of the keys to our survival will be to recognize how little we actually know and not be wedded to our own individual thoughts. Recognize that we have limited perspectives.
You can inspire others that they are not alone in their journey, because we all have our journey. just remind that if you had a situation where you did cut your finger and it hurted, how does it feel? This is the same feeling when you get excluded, when you are suffering from discrimination, and nobody wants that. So this is important. Representation matters.
In my book, A Greater Fortune, Essential Lessons from the Entrepreneur Who Bought the Company That Fired Her, the proceeds of this book, the portion that goes to me, because publisher keeps a lot of it, they're being donated to lovemissions.net. It's a human trafficking organization that I met through Melody Garcia. Tina Marie, she was human trafficked at the age of 4. She was sold for $25 by her own mother, and then she was rescued. And that we have a lot of similarities in our story of what we went through as a childhood. And so my heart is really heavy for helping those victims.
And in order to step into that leadership, you've got to surround yourself with other leaders, with other people that are supporting you on your mission, that are all rowing the boat in the same direction and not drilling holes in it when you're not looking. And as a leader, talking about that boat, just know that it's okay to rock the boat, because so many times we don't rock the boat because we're afraid people are going to fall out. Guess what? Some people have to fall out of your boat. And if they fall out, they weren't meant to be in your boat in the first place.
I'm really feeling incredible because it's like a flowing, it's like you're talking about artificial intelligence and talking about reskilling, education. We need to reskill, unlearn, relearn. It's really motivation for all of us, but yes, a little fear as well, jobless. We need to educate ourselves as such so that we can beat the human mind as well. And human mind is not versus towards, beating the artificial intelligence. So, it's time to question for this particular task. I'm worried about 2040, but I think we all ready. We have to get ready, educate ourselves, reskill ourselves, learn about new technologies, and leaders never give up.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for watching. Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Please don't drink and drive. Don't text and drive. Always be kind. Let's stop bullies and the coronavirus. See you next week. Bye-bye.